Hello and welcome to our lesson on 10.2. We're going to work with frequency and histograms. Start off by warming up here. Hit pause and work on some of these. Okay. Looking for the least and greatest values. Simply looking for the smallest number, 23 in this case, and the greatest, 75. Down here, looking for the ones that start with the smallest, so we have a 1.3. And then we've got a 4 with a 4.8. It's our greatest. Placing in order, the 2.1 and the 2.4. 2.9. Okay. Our objectives are to create stem and leaf plots as well as frequency tables and histograms. And we use the frequency table to create the histogram. Makes it a little bit easier. Here's our vocabulary. You'll see it throughout the lesson. Come back to this page and put in your definitions. For a stem and leaf plot, it arranges the data by dividing each data value into two parts. This allows you to see each data value. You can see one of the important features is to have a key so people know how to read your data. When we look at the number of defective widgets in batches of 1,000, we can rewrite this in a stem and leaf. And the key will show us that the tens and the ones digits are separated by the line through the middle. So looking at all the values that start with single digit numbers, then teens, and then the 20s, we just fill it in, and that's the basic look. All right, now this one's a little more complicated. We're looking at scores for two different teams, and so you will read from left to right as well as right to left. If you look down here at the key, in the middle will be our tens digit, and the ones will be to the right for Team B, and then the ones will be to the left, which is kind of odd for Team A. It's not a real common thing to see, but I don't think it's too challenging. We go ahead and fill in all these numbers. And we can do a comparison to some degree between the two teams' scores. All right, looking at temperature in degrees Celsius for 2 weeks. Given below, use the data to make a stem and leaf plot. I'm going to ask you to hit pause, see if you can go through and do this. Okay. 7 was the smallest, and a 19, a lot of 20s, and some in the 30s. The next type of data presentation we'll have is a frequency table. The frequency of a data value is the number of times it occurs. A frequency table shows the frequency of each data value. If the data is divided into intervals, the table shows the frequency of each interval. And this is going to be useful as we go to develop a histogram. Now, to make a frequency table for the number of days of Maria's last 15 vacations, we'll start by identifying the least and greatest values. Her smallest vacation length was 4, goes up to 15. Now what we want to do is divide the data into evenly spaced intervals. Usually want to have at least 4 intervals, and we split this up. We can go by 3-day increments. So if we list the intervals in the first column of the table as being 3 days, we'll have 1 to 3, 4 to 6, oops, 7 to 9, 10 to 12, and 13 to 15. And now when we count up how many vacations Maria had in each of these intervals, we see from 1 to 3 she had none. From 4 to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 to 9, 1, 2, 4. And from 10 to 12, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. And then finally the last two are 13 to 15. Alright, a histogram is a bar graph used to display the frequency of data divided into equal intervals. The bars must be equal width and should touch, but not overlap. Boundary values are placed in the bin to the right. So when we look at a histogram, it looks similar to a bar chart, but remember a bar chart just looked at categories and how many showed up. The histogram is going to be for a specific category, a type, and then what quantitative values were found in that when it was surveyed. For instance, if we look at that Western Civilization class data table, the frequency table, we could list the information in a bar chart. First, we'd use the scale and the interval from the frequency table, and you can see that the scale was relates to the frequency. It's going to be from 0 or 1 up to 5 or 6, and then the interval was given by tens. We draw a bar for the number of classes in each interval, and all the bars should be the same width, and the bars should touch. Now if they don't touch, it just means that for that interval there was not any data, which might be relevant if you're doing research. And then step 3 is simply to title the graph and label the horizontal and vertical scales. I want you to hit pause and see if you can create your histogram for this data. Okay, the first bar goes from 1 to 10. There was only one of those. From 11 to 20, there were 4 classes with that size in it. And then 21 to 30 is the most frequently occurring, it looks like. There were 5 classes with 21 to 30 students. And then the larger classes, there were 2. All right. So you can really see that a frequency table and a histogram are quite similar. A little more visual for the histogram. Okay, we're ready for a quick quiz then. I want you to see if you can create the stem and leaf for this data. Okay, well we want to start by just stating our key. And we would draw something like this. Means a value of 12. And to create the stem and leaf, we see there are no single digits, so we start with the teens. And I see a 15, 16, a 12, and a 14, so I can put a 1 here, and then put the numbers. Following up with the 20s. Get rid of these. And so for 20s, we have 21, 22, 5, and 28. 30s then. Got 3 of those. 4, 5, 8. and 9. Whoops, just 9. And then 40s, 0, 1, and 6. And then 50s, 1, and 56. And that gives us a total of 8, 11, 14, 16, and that's how many items. Now the last couple of questions in the quiz. We'll start with the numbers of pounds of laundry in a washer at a laundromat are given below. Use the data to make a frequency table. And we're going to have it fit into 4 intervals. Our least value is 2. It goes up to 12. So if we're going to split that up among 4, we could go from 1 to 12 intervals of 3 pounds. So 1 to 3 to 6 10 to 12, and the frequencies. 1 for the 1 to 3, and now that we have the intervals, we'll go through and count our values. From 1 to 3, looks like there's 2 of them. From 4 to 6, 1, 2, 3. From 7 to 9, there are 4, and then 10 to 12 we have 2. All right, we're going to use this data to answer the next question. Use the frequency table above to make a histogram. Go ahead and hit pause and see if you can create that histogram. Okay, hopefully it worked out well. I'll draw my first bar up to 2. The next bar, there were 3 from 4 to 6. Make sure they touch. And from 7 to 9 we had 4. And then finally just 2 on the end. All right, there you go. And remember, we took the boundary values and moved them over to the right.